Caitlin Clark got a little get back at Kelsey Plum.
She was taking a shot.
Could not help but to drag Caitlin Clark through the glass as she did it.
0 members of Team Clark were very present for that.
The WNBA is on a hot streak. They're finally turning.
The whole WNBA has been rocked by what happened moments ago. And Caitlin Clark just destroyed Kelsey Plum in the most cold-blooded, calculating manner we've ever witnessed in women's basketball, so she's probably sick to her stomach someplace right now. This wasn't merely retaliation, therefore I'm still having trouble understanding it. It served as a guide for totally outwitting and exposing anyone attempting to discredit you. Without a doubt, Plum was erased rather than simply losing. If you're sticking with Caitlin all the way, hit the like button before we break down this whole meltdown, because there's no way you'll still support Plum after learning the truth.
You have sore losers and you have sore winners, and Kelsey Plum is both.
We want to blow them out. We're a lot better than them.
We're watching for the league. We're really watching for Caitlin Clark. Everyone's going to be making more because of Caitlin Clark.
Caitlin Clark is the one bringing in the numbers.
Well, there's one.
Let's go back to the beginning of this whole thing. Because this was not a small-scale, chance conflict. Envy, covert sabotage, and an attempt by one player to dim the light of the biggest star the WNBA has ever created were the main causes of this. It began at the WNBA All-Star Game, which ought to have been a celebration of unity and the pinnacle of women's basketball. Instead, Kelsey Plum destroyed on court. Rather, it turned into one of the sport's most awkward and jealous moments. Players were pushing the league for more pay at the time by supporting the "pay us what you owe us" movement. To be honest, that section is entirely deserved. These athletes ought to be compensated. However, it was at this point that Kelsey Plum showed her hand and made what could turn out to be the worst premeditated decision of her career. Plum made the decision to make a barely disguised jab at Caitlin Clark during a news conference, with cameras flashing and the entire basketball world watching, all the while avoiding the nerve to mention her name out loud.
That'll tell, but 0 members of Team Clark were very present for that.
Or her actually making comments about Caitlin Clark's team not being at this meeting for the CBA.
She stated that none of the players on Team Clark were actually part in this well-crafted statement. A clear job targeted at player activism and the league's wage disputes. It was incredibly nerve-wracking. She focused on the player who has brought the WNBA more attention, money, and awareness than anybody in its 28-year history and attempted to paint her as conceited and cut off from her colleagues. Even non-basketball fans could understand exactly what she was doing since the move was so obvious, so calculated, and, to be honest, so stupid. The situation's actuality is what makes it even more frustrating. Clark did not attend the All-Star Game at all. She was recuperating and managing her own situation at home. She was under no obligation to participate in performances to demonstrate her support for player advocacy.
Took a shot at Caitlin Clark during that whole thing about Team Clark wasn't very present for that.
To me, I thought that was a little dig at Caitlin. A lot of people definitely thought so.
Plum, she was taking a shot at Caitlin Clark's situation involving the "pay us what you owe us."
She has practically completely changed the landscape of women's basketball, attracting millions of new fans, raising awareness of the sport, and significantly contributing to the WNBA's unprecedented financial viability. Nevertheless, Plum continued to have the audacity to doubt her commitment. The level of contempt was unbelievable, but what came next was even more gratifying. The outcry was swift and brutal. Take a look at Sabrina Ionescu's response at that press conference. Her expression was filled with discomfort as she realized what Plum had just started. Even commentator Stacey King didn't sugarcoat it, pointing out how dangerous it is to criticize the league's golden ticket. He wasn't incorrect either. The story is told by the data. TV ratings have increased since the arrival of Caitlin Clark. The merchandise is selling out quickly. The cost of tickets is rapidly increasing. And expansion fees have practically overnight increased from $50 million to $250 million. Plum decided to publicly pursue the WNBA's most valuable asset since she is the league's most powerful negotiating tool in wage negotiations. However, Caitlin Clark demonstrated that she is more than simply a lead on the court at this point.
Help but to say that Caitlin Clark didn't join in on the t-shirt discussion.
This week they wore t-shirts saying, making a statement, you better pay us. But instead of just leaving it at that, Kelsey Plum for LA had to take a dig at Caitlin Clark. Here she is.
The t-shirt, just united front was determined this morning, that we had a meeting for. And, not to tattletale, but 0 members of Team Clark We're very present for that.
She is a cunning strategist who works at a level that most people are unable to perceive. While everyone else is stuck on checkers, you're playing chess. Clark did the ultimate power move rather than responding with a careless press comment or engaging in a social media spat. She remained silent. Silence worked for her. Without even entering the court, she continued to make headlines while patiently waiting for the perfect opportunity to react. And it struck like a wrecking ball when that time came. Shortly after the issue, Clark disclosed a huge worldwide agreement with Nike, demonstrating once more that big companies are rushing up and vying to be associated with her. Clark was busy growing her business while Plum concentrated on destroying her. But when Clark saw Plum sharing photos from a Nike event, it was the final straw. Even though Plum had signed a contract with Under Armour, Nike's direct competitor, Clark made the most perfectly timed, cutting remark that drove the internet into a frenzy. "I appreciate the Nike advertisement. She is earning well over 7 figures from sponsorships alone, and brands are lined up with open checkbooks. The business community is aware of what some detractors won't acknowledge, even though some established players are still struggling to gain recognition. Clark represents the present as well as the future, and she is the main reason this sport is finally receiving the recognition and financial support it has long deserved." Kelsey Plum has been utterly silent since that Instagram comment, probably because she realized she had challenged someone who plays on a completely different plane. The same player who attempted to paint Clark as self-centered and uninterested ultimately lost against someone who recognizes that genuine impact doesn't require loudness. It just existing and lets the results speak for themselves. Plum's efforts to remain current hardly register, while Clark's influence is so great that even a minor social media comment becomes major news. However, this tale goes beyond a personal altercation between two players. We're witnessing a larger attempt by some WNBA veterans to control and curb Caitlin Clark's meteoric rise, and it's spectacularly failing. Prior to Clark's arrival, the league was struggling with poor viewership, little media interest, and expansion fees that were insignificant compared to today's levels. There was very little national buzz and games were frequently held in partially empty arenas. The WNBA had poor sales, empty arenas, and no profitability prior to Clark's arrival. Then everything changed. Ratings increased dramatically. The jerseys were flying off the shelves. The cost of tickets increased. Expansion fees increased and media deals exploded. Her influence is responsible for almost all of the league's beneficial developments. However, some veterans react with barely disguised jealousy and hostility rather than welcoming that development. What they don't understand is straightforward. Everyone is inspired by Clark's accomplishment. Increased viewership translates into increased compensation, improved resources, and actual leverage for the league. They have been competing for her as the catalyst. Clark has demonstrated why she is more than just a fantastic player throughout it all. She is a leader who is aware of timing, power, and the long game. She doesn't pursue drama. She uses criticism to gain momentum. Fans witness it. It is demonstrated by the numbers. Additionally, history is happening right now.